Mitsubishi was once a very successful manufacturer in the World Rally Championship, but in 2000, something went very wrong. The car was a disaster. Its handling was hated by its drivers. This was the team that seemed untouchable, the team that made Tommi Makinen as famous as he is today. But let's just put into perspective how good Mitsubishi were before they unveiled this absolute pile of garbage of a car. Mitsubishi joined the World Rally Championship in 1989 with a Galant. They did alright for a new team, winning the Rally of Finland in 1989. New cars very rarely win rallies, so that was a promising sign of things to come. They'd pick up a few more wins here and there, but it was in 1993 when Mitsubishi introduced their most famous rally car, the Lancer Evo. The Lancer Evo was also pretty good. Their lead driver, Armin Schwarz, how does he get into all these videos, would pick up a podium in Acropolis Rally Greece. He did have a bit of a tendency to pick up podiums in rough rallies in cars that hadn't finished on the podium before. But it was 1994 when something big happened with some random Finnish guy named Tommi Makinen joining the team. He retired from his first rally with suspension damage, so I'm assuming we won't hear anything about him for the rest of the story. Anyway, in 1995, it turned out that Toyota were cheating, and that promoted all the other teams up by one place in the Manufacturers' Championship at the end of that year. And this meant that Mitsubishi would finish second place in the Manufacturers' standings. Well, that's certainly nice. Another new up-and-comer, also from Japan, would take the Manufacturers and the Drivers' Championship that year, Subaru, with Colin McRae narrowly beating Carlos Sainz to the crown after Subaru's more formidable driver missed one round due to a mountain biking injury. But it turns out that this Tommi Makinen guy was actually pretty good. In the 1995 Rally of Sweden, Kenneth Eriksson took the Mitsubishi Evo's first World Rally Championship win. But Tommi Makinen was second, and he got a few strong results in the following rounds. 1995 was also the end of an era in the World Rally Championship. In 1995, the top class cars were called Group A. Group A cars were heavily upgraded production-based cars. For 1996, a new rule set called the World Rally Car came in. The World Rally Car rule set was important as WRC was losing manufacturers. In 1995 there were only 4, and with Toyota's disqualification, Mitsubishi's second place doesn't sound quite as impressive since they only had to beat what was then a fairly dysfunctional Ford team. So what the FIA did was they made it so the road car didn't have to be all-wheel drive and turbocharged in order for an all-wheel drive or turbocharged car to be entered. This would open up the championship to new manufacturers by reducing the need for costly homologation specials. Audi created the new meta where all-wheel drive and turbos were mandatory to win world championships ever since the 1980s. Only one Lancia ever managed to do it without these since Audi showed up, and that was very early days before Audis even had centre diffs. And this effectively locked out any manufacturer that did not produce an all-wheel drive turbo road car. They also capped engine sizes to just 2 litres among other things. The cap on engine size meant that Subaru needed a new car for the new rules. Ford was legal, but the Escort RS Cosworth was proving to be rather uncompetitive by 1995, so they elected to dump the in-house Escort Group A rally car and contract a team called M-Sport to build their new Ford Escort World Rally car for 1996. But Mitsubishi's Group A Lancer Evo was perfectly legal in both the old and the new rules, so they stuck with a Group A car in 1996. A well-known thing in rallying is that whenever a manufacturer brings a new car, it takes about a season or so to make the new car fast and reliable. Keeping an old car around can be beneficial up to a point, although they will always eventually get a bit outdated and slow, so you have to keep this balanced. Mitsubishi extended the surface life of their Lancer Evo by updating the car rather than replacing it, which is how it got from the Evo 3 all the way to the Evo 6.5. Meaning that Evos from 7 onwards are not true homologation specials for WRC, just Group N. But in 1996, it also turned out that this random Finnish guy called Tommi Makinen, which by the way is basically the Finnish equivalent of being called John Smith. In fact, I competed against a completely different, unrelated Finnish guy called Tommi Makinen in FIA Rally Star. But anyway, this Tommi Makinen guy turned out to be incredibly fast. Not the one I compete against, well, he was actually also really fast, but this video is about 90s and 2000s Mitsubishi World Rally cars and not the FIA Rally Star driver that was against. Anyway, this Makinen guy was really fast, and well, he proved himself. The season started in Sweden. He walked away with a win. They went to Kenya, a dominant win for Makinen. Argentina, he won that. Finland, no question, of course he won that. Australia too, he won 5 of the 8 rounds that year. Absolute domination. He won the World Championship in 1996. Oh yeah, and 1997 too, and 1998 and 1999. At the start of 1996, he'd only ever won 1 World Rally. By the end of 1999, he was a 4-time world champion, equaling Juha Känkkönen and fighting hard with Colin McRae and Carlos Sainz over the title of the most wins achieved in WRC history, something all 3 of them would take the lead of at various times. But in 1999, something happened. The World Rally Car rules were working well, and new manufacturers had finally shown up. Seat turned up in 1998, Skoda in 1999, Peugeot showed up in 1999 as well. M-Sport replaced the old Escort with a new Focus. The competition was coming thick and fast, but in Rally Monte Carlo, Tommi Makinen once again started the season off with a win. Rally fans must have been getting rather tired of Tommi Makinen winning everything by this point, but in the following rounds, he just wasn't as quick as the previous years. The Mitsubishi was becoming uncompetitive. The reality is, there's more performance that you can get out of a World Rally car than you can get from a Group A car. There was a bit of technical freedom in the World Rally car regulations. The advantage that Mitsubishi had of a familiar car was declining. Makinen would pick up 3 more wins in 2000, but it would be another Finn, Markus Grönholm, who would win the World Championship, as well as the symbolically important Rally of Finland. In 2001, however, the Lancer Evo 6.5 was still going strong. Makinen would fight hard for the World Championship in its early rounds, leading it after Safari Rally Kenya after the midpoint, when many of his competitors retired. But Mitsubishi decided that enough was enough. The car was too old and it was time for it to be retired to the history books. Starting in 2001, Rally of San Remo. The rally teams headed to Italy to go and enter the Rally of San Remo. The Tarmac Classic event was one that the French teams were expected to go well in. The French drivers, tyres and cars always go well on tarmac, so Mitsubishi's hopes were not high as the debut of the Mitsubishi Lancer World Rally car. The car was no longer an Evo, it was just a World Rally car, like the rest of the competition. It wasn't just the Lancer World Rally car that was new though. Citroën, who had first entered the championship in 2001, also had a new car. They decided to give some French rookie guy a shot in the World Rally Championship. There he is. Anyway, Mitsubishi, they were finally going to see how well their new car was going. Tommi Makinen went out onto the stage and immediately a problem. Something was wrong with the transmission. This made the car difficult to drive and slower through the corners. The transmission system was one part of the car carried over from the Group A car, and when he got back to the service park, none of the mechanics could work out what was wrong with the transmission. WRC transmissions in the early 2000s were extremely complicated things, even more so than today, where regulations have kept the complexity down a bit. The transmissions had loads of parameters and functions that changed levels of locking under certain circumstances, torque distribution and all sorts of other complicated things. With this amount of electronics, there's always more chance for a mystery issue. With electronic problems, unlike mechanical problems, it's usually unclear exactly what the problem is, since there isn't usually something simple like a mechanical component that's exploded into a million pieces. These transmission systems were just so insanely complicated that an issue can occur that not even the best trained rally mechanics in the world can diagnose. To explain how a Mitsubishi Evo transmission system works, here's a really cool looking video from 2008 that doesn't actually explain anything at all. Now that we've got that cleared up, back to the latest action from 2001. Tommi Makinen's teammate, Freddie Loix, also had transmission problems. It's a very strange issue given that it's a carried over system from the Evo. For the remainder of the rally, both of the Mitsubishi Lancer WRCs were just slow for the rest of the rally, setting uncompetitive stage times and consequently getting very little TV coverage. It was all the way towards the end of the rally, with just 2 stages to go, when Tommi Makinen's 11th place Lancer finally got some screen time by crashing into a curb and losing a wheel. He pulled off the road and his rally was over. Freddie Loix would be the sole Mitsubishi to finish, taking 12th place in his Lancer, well outside the points. It wouldn't be long after the Rally of San Remo that we get another rally on the Mediterranean. Tour de Corse on the French island of Corsica was next. Big news at the start of the rally. New driver signings would shake up the field for 2002. Tommi Makinen had made up his mind. Despite being in the championship fight, he was unhappy with Mitsubishi. He would be headed for Subaru in 2002. Richard Burns would go from Subaru to Peugeot. The 206 was a great car. On the opening stage of Rally France though, it seemed that Tommi Makinen's decision to go to Subaru was a good one, as he only managed to set the 11th fastest time. This guy is a 4-time world champion. He knows how to drive, he's not some 11th place type of driver. Stage 2 would see Makinen fail to improve by that much, just 10th place. This Lancer just wasn't fast. Mitsubishi made some setup changes to Makinen's Lancer for Stage 3. This helped the performance greatly. The rear suspension was made stiffer, and Makinen set the 5th fastest time. Perhaps there was just the tiniest bit of potential in the car. On Stage 5, he wanted to go even faster, so he tried a more abstract approach to taking a corner. Evidently, that didn't work, and the car crashed heavily. Co-driver Risto Madison-Mackie would be trapped in the car and airlifted to hospital. He would return to rally co-driving for 2 rallies in 2003, where he'd pick up a podium. Oh yeah, and Freddie Loix finished a Rally of France that year in 12th position, by the way. Coming into the Rally of Australia, Mitsubishi were not looking like a strong competitor. Tommi Makinen had a bad back, and he had a new co-driver due to the injury to his regular co-driver. His new co-driver wasn't quite so new, since he did drive with him previously in 1989, but he still had to readapt to a co-driver he'd last driven with 12 years prior. This wasn't going to be easy for Makinen. Freddie Loix was also struggling to adapt to the new Lancer World Rally car, but there was some good news. The rally was the first gravel rally for the Lancer World Rally car, and Mitsubishi were hoping that their car would be more capable on gravel than it was on tarmac. On tarmac, the Peugeots and Citroens dominated. In fact, Citroën did nearly all of their testing and development on tarmac. only simply made adaptations for gravel. So the top 5 spots were effectively reserved for French cars on tarmac, meaning that Makinen's 11th place wasn't quite as far off the places that it was seen as Ford, Hyundai, Skoda and Subaru would also struggle on the tarmac. But as stage 1 came around, it seems like more of the same. A short, super special stage in Perth would see Tommi Makinen set a less than stellar time, 17th place. But to be fair, it was just a super special. They don't really mean a great deal for the rally overall. Stage 2 would see Makinen struggle. He felt that the car seemed to feel heavy and a bit unresponsive. The car was tricky to control, and he was struggling with the pace notes too. He placed 7th though on stage 2. He'd remain in 7th place for the following few stages, but would soon climb to 6th and into the points by the 5th stage. At the same time, Freddie Loix continued to struggle with his Lancer, getting away with this heavy impact on his way to place 943rd or wherever he was. But Tommi Makinen would find himself in a close battle with a Subaru of Petter Solberg. He'd drop to 7th on stage 11, but setting the 4th fastest stage time on stages 12 and 14 would aid Makinen in getting that all-important 6th place back. Remember, he was still fighting for the World Rally Championship, and before the Lancer World Rally car showed up, he was only a point behind Colin McRae, and since neither Makinen nor McRae had scored since New Zealand, there was still only 1 point between them. This championship was tight, and to make matters better for Makinen, McRae was only 1 position ahead in 5th place, so the championship was wide open. This was a true classic. Mitsubishi were working out their new car, and it clearly wasn't a very good car, but they only needed 1 more point than the struggling Colin McRae and they'd clinch the World Rally Championship at the end of the year. Makinen went from 5th fastest on stage 18, then 4th fastest on the following stage. The Lancer was not a winning car by any means, but it was at least far more competitive on the gravel than it was on the Mediterranean tarmac. The 21st stage of the Rally of Australia would be an historic stage. This stage would be televised on live TV, something that the WRC didn't do before this. Tommi Makinen clearly wanted to give the cameras a good show. He absolutely flew over the famous Bunnings jumps, despite the issues with his back. He set the 2nd fastest time on the stage. That Lancer might have had some potential hiding in it on gravel, and the team in Makinen maybe just needed more familiarity with setting up and driving the car to be fast. Between the top 4 drivers, Ford's Colin McRae led the World Championship by just a single point from Tommi Makinen in the Mitsubishi. In 3rd place was Subaru's Richard Burns, 1 point behind Tommi Makinen. Carlos Sainz was 4th on 33 points, technically in the running for the World Drivers' Championship, but would need all 3 top drivers to retire and take the win in order to win the championship. Something that was very possible given the reliability of early 2000s World Rally cars compared to today, and the fact the top 3 would be pushing quite hard, and therefore likely to make a mistake. This was a championship finale that would keep everyone on the edges of their seats. If Richard Burns won and Colin McRae finished below 2nd, or any other combination of positions where Burns outscores McRae by 3 or more points, and Makinen by 2 or more, Burns would be the world champion. He had fewer wins than McRae, so would be dropped behind on countback if McRae finished on the same number of points. The same goes for if Makinen and Burns finish on the same points. If Makinen was on the same number of points as McRae though, McRae would be world champion, since although both had 3 wins, McRae had a 2nd place as well, and Makinen didn't. All 3 drivers were going to have to go absolutely flat out. Mitsubishi knew that their car was troublesome, consequently they did heaps of testing for Rally GB, knowing how important this round was. This was the last chance for Mitsubishi to take a World Drivers' Championship with Makinen. With Alistair McRae and Francois Delacour signed for 2002, They weren't looking like strong championship contenders with that driver lineup. Both knew how to get a car around, but they weren't championship material. Well, Delacour sort of, about 10 years earlier, but not in 2002. The rally started with a nighttime super special stage in Cardiff. Colin McRae would take the win on the super special stage, with Tommi Makinen 18th. That's huge. And Richard Burns was 10th. It was all going well for the Scotsman, but not to plan for Tommi Makinen. But the good news is that super special stages are super short stages, and they don't really matter that much. Makinen felt that the car handled well out on the forest stages. We'd see the car's real pace. Colin McRae was going fast out in front, but Tommi Makinen was also flat out himself. He wasn't planning to make things easy for Colin McRae, but oh no! That did not look good. Let's have another look at that. It doesn't sound good either. Makinen's front left suspension broke after hitting something in the road, and his rally was over. Makinen would not be the 2001 World Rally Champion. It was now down to Colin McRae and Richard Burns, and Colin McRae was leading both the World Rally Championship and the rally, so it was looking great for McRae's hopes of his second World Championship. And just look how committed he is driving that Focus, and oh no! That was too committed. So with McRae out, Burns now just has to score more than 2 points and he'll be the world champion. That's fallen right into his hands, but oh! He's gone off! Lucky for him, he's managed to get the car back on the road, but you don't want to be doing that when you're fighting for a world championship. Eventually, Richard Burns managed to finish third place and took the 2001 World Rally Championship. Makinen, who was looking like the clear favourite before Mitsubishi introduced the new car mid-season, was third in the drivers' standings, and now he was off to Subaru. The following year, Mitsubishi didn't have the driver lineup, and they still couldn't figure out the car. They finished P6 out of 6 in the World Championship, scoring points in just one round, and they left the World Rally Championship at the end of that year. They would return in 2004 with the Lancer WRC 04. And to learn more about that, subscribe to this channel and watch my next video.